The boardroom doors exploded inward. A child in a dirt-smeared uniform collapsed against the doorframe, gulping air like she'd sprinted miles. Vivian Barrett's pen hovered over a $50 million contract, ink bleeding onto crisp white paper. The girl's trembling finger stabbed at the blueprint spread across the mahogany table, at elegant cursive, dated March 2018. "Ma'am." Her voice shattered the corporate silence. "That's my dad's signature." Every head swiveled. Standing in the doorway, framed by fluorescent hallway light, was a man in navy coveralls, mop handle gripped in work-worn hands. The janitor who'd polished their floors for years without a glance, without a word. His name, right there in fading ink beside architectural renderings worth millions. Vivian's fingers went cold. That handwriting looked familiar. Too familiar. But from where? The girl's eyes, red, desperate, locked onto hers. And suddenly, Vivian couldn't remember how to breathe. Who was Raymond Cole? Brooke Lang, Vivian's assistant, moved first. Her heels clicked sharp against marble as she circled toward the child, phone already in hand. "Security, we have a situation in the executive boardroom." Her voice carried the practiced authority of someone used to removing problems. The girl didn't move, just stood there, chest heaving, finger still pointing at that signature like it was the only solid thing in a tilting world. Vivian raised one hand. The gesture froze Brooke mid-stride. "Wait!" Vivian's voice came out rougher than she intended. She looked past the child to the man in the doorway. Raymond Cole. The name meant nothing. His face meant nothing. But those hands, scarred, calloused, wrapped tight around that mop handle like a lifeline, told a story she couldn't quite read. "Mr. Cole," she tested the name. "You work here?" The man's jaw tightened. "Yes, ma'am. Building maintenance. 5 years. His voice was low, careful, the kind of voice that had learned to take up as little space as possible. He didn't look at the blueprint, didn't look at his daughter, just stared at a spot somewhere past Vivian's left shoulder, the way people do when they're trying to disappear while standing in plain sight. "Hazel." The name came out quiet, almost broken. "We need to go." The girl, Hazel, shook her head so hard her tangled hair whipped across her face. "No, they need to know. They're using your design and they don't even know it's yours." Her voice cracked on the last word. Raymond flinched like she'd struck him. Vivian stood slowly. The other board members watched in silence, confusion written across expensive suits and manicured hands. The lead engineer from the consulting firm shifted his weight, papers rustling. "Ms. Barrett, I'm not sure what's happening here, but we have a schedule to maintain. Groundbreaking is Monday." His tone suggested this interruption was beneath them all. But Vivian wasn't listening. She moved around the table, each step deliberate, until she stood directly in front of the blueprint. March 2018. 7 years ago. She'd been VP of Finance then, buried in spreadsheets and investor calls while her brother ran the design division. Her brother, who'd died that April. Who'd taken half her heart with him when his car left the road on a rainy night she still couldn't think about without tasting metal. She picked up the blueprint with both hands. The paper felt thin, fragile, like it might crumble under too much scrutiny. The signature was there, clear as daylight. R. Cole, March 15th, 2018. Below it, another signature. This one burned into her memory. Her brother's handwriting. The same looping V, the same confident slash through the B. They'd signed together. Partners. "You worked with my brother." Not a question. A statement that landed in the room like a stone in still water. Raymond's eyes finally met hers. For just a second, she saw something flicker there. Recognition? Grief? something that looked almost like guilt. Then it was gone, shuttered behind that careful, invisible expression. "Yes, ma'am." He cleared his throat. "I was senior architect here, 2014 to 2018. Your brother and I collaborated on several projects." The words came out rehearsed, like he'd practiced this conversation in his head 1,000 times, but never thought he'd actually have to say it out loud. The room erupted. Voices overlapped, questions fired from 3 directions at once. The silver-haired board member, whose name Vivian could never remember, stood up, pointing. "You're telling me our janitor used to be an architect?" Someone else laughed, the sound ugly and disbelieving. Brooke's face had gone pale, her phone forgotten in her hand. But Hazel's voice cut through it all. "My dad didn't just work here. He designed this." She stabbed at the blueprint again, her small finger leaving a smudge on the paper. "He and Ms. Barrett's brother spent 2 years on Riverside Plaza. Dad has notebooks full of surveys and soil samples and calculations. And he told me, he tried to tell someone 3 weeks ago that there's something wrong with the current design, but nobody listened because he cleans toilets." The last 3 words rang out like an accusation. Vivian felt them settle in her chest, heavy and uncomfortable. 5 years. Raymond Cole had been in this building for 5 years, emptying trash cans and mopping floors, and she'd never once looked at his face, never asked his name, never seen him at all. "What's wrong with the design?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Raymond hesitated. His daughter turned to look at him, those desperate red eyes pleading. He closed his eyes for a long moment, and when he opened them, something had shifted. The invisible man was gone. What stood in his place looked tired, older, but solid, present. "The foundation calculations don't account for the water table shift." His voice was different now, clearer, professional. "There was a flood in 2011. Minor, barely made the news. But it changed the underground aquifer by 6 feet east. Your engineering firm used geological data from 2009, before the shift." He took 3 steps into the room. The mop clattered against the doorframe as he set it down. "If you build according to these plans, the pilings will hit saturated soil instead of bedrock. The building will sink 3 to 4 inches per year. 10 years from now, you're looking at structural failure. 15 years, collapse." Silence, the kind that presses against your eardrums. The lead engineer recovered first. "That's absurd. Our team conducted a full geological survey in 2023. Industry standard. We've built 30 projects with similar soil conditions and never had an issue." His tone dripped with condescension. "With all due respect, you've been out of the field for 7 years. Methods change." "Physics doesn't." Raymond's response was quiet but absolute. He moved to the table, and this time nobody stopped him. His fingers, those work-worn, scarred fingers, traced a line across the blueprint. "See this? The piling depth is 8 feet, standard for this soil type, based on pre-flood data, but the water table now sits at 6.2 feet during winter storms. That leaves you with 1.8 feet of buffer. You need minimum 3 feet for safety factor. Minimum." Vivian watched his hands move across the paper. Confident. Precise. These weren't the hands of someone who'd forgotten his trade. These were the hands of someone who'd been forced to stop using it. "How do you know the water table depth?" The question came out sharper than she meant it. Raymond reached into his coverall pocket and pulled out a small notebook. Leather, cracked with age, held together with a rubber band. He opened it to a page filled with sketches, numbers, coordinates. 2 different handwritings filled the margins. One she didn't recognize. One she did. Her breath caught. "Your brother and I drilled 18 test cores in 2016 and 17. Spent 14 months surveying that site. We documented everything." He turned the page. More sketches, More calculations, both handwritings woven together like a conversation across paper. This was supposed to be our masterpiece. Safe, beautiful, lasting. Something families could build lives in. His voice roughed on the edges. We finished the design in March 2018, but I'd found the aquifer shift problem. Told him we needed 6 more months to redesign the foundation system. He wanted to proceed. Investors were pushing. Deadlines were tight. We argued. The room had gone completely still. Vivian's hands shook as she reached for the notebook. Raymond let her take it. The leather was warm from his pocket, soft from years of handling. She turned pages slowly. There, her brother's handwriting, his terrible spelling of coefficient, his habit of drawing little arrows in the margins. And beside it, Raymond's precise notes, his careful calculations, his small sketches of support structures. What happened? Her voice barely made it past her throat. She knew what happened. April 11th, 2018. A Wednesday. Raining. Her brother's car on Route 7, a curve he'd taken 1,000 times. But she needed to hear it. Needed to understand why this man had been invisible in her building for 5 years. Raymond's face did something complicated. Pain and guilt and grief all fighting for space. He called me. Night of April 10th. Left a voicemail. His hand went to his pocket, pulled out an old phone, the kind nobody used anymore. Cracked screen. Battery probably held together with hope. I still have it, never could delete it. He pressed play. The room filled with a voice Vivian hadn't heard in 7 years. Her brother's voice, tired but warm, with that slight roughness he got when he was working late. Ray, it's me. You're right. I'm sorry I pushed. Tomorrow we tell them we need 6 more months. Safety first. Always. Thanks for not letting me build something dangerous. See you tomorrow. The message ended. That word, tomorrow, hung in the air like smoke. Tomorrow never came. Vivian's vision blurred. Someone in the room was crying. It took her a moment to realize it was her. I quit the day after the funeral. Raymond's voice was barely audible. Couldn't look at blueprints without seeing him standing next to me. 6 months later, my wife died. Cancer. Fast and brutal. I had Hazel. She was 4 years old. I couldn't do 60-hour weeks anymore. Couldn't handle the pressure, the deadlines, the constant weight of knowing one mistake could kill someone. He looked at his daughter, and the love there was so raw it hurt to witness. So I found work that let me be invisible, work with hours that meant I could pick her up from school, work that came with health insurance and didn't ask questions about the 2-year gap in my resume. You came back here. Vivian's words came out flat, trying to process. To this building. Raymond nodded. I applied as Raymond, not Ray. Different department. Nobody from my old division was still in HR. And I needed this. Needed to be close to the last place he was happy. Even if I was just the guy mopping floors. He took the notebook back from her shaking hands. But 3 weeks ago I saw the Riverside Plaza project was active again. Saw the plans. Realized you were using our old design, the flawed one. I filed a report with building management, sent it to engineering. Nobody responded. The building manager, a quiet man who usually stayed in the background, cleared his throat from his position near the door. He did. I forwarded it to the consulting firm. Marked urgent. I got an automated response saying they'd review it. His voice was apologetic, embarrassed. I should have followed up. The lead engineer's face had gone red. We don't take engineering advice from maintenance staff. It's not protocol. Hazel made a sound, something between a laugh and a sob. He's not maintenance staff. He's the man who designed 12 buildings in this city. 0 failures, 0 injuries, But you can't see past his uniform." Vivian looked at the girl, really looked at her. The mud on her clothes wasn't from playing, it was from running. The swelling around her eyes wasn't just from crying. There was a bruise forming on her cheekbone. "Hazel, what happened to you?" The girl's hand went to her face, self-conscious. "Got in a fight at school. Girl said my dad was just a janitor, said I was lying about him being an architect, said we were trash." Her chin lifted, defiant despite the tears. "So I punched her, got suspended, but I'm not sorry, because my dad is brilliant, and just because you can't see it doesn't make it not true." The words hit Vivian like a physical blow. She thought about the last 5 years. How many times had Raymond Cole emptied her trash can, cleaned her windows, restocked her coffee supplies? How many times had she walked past him in the hallway without a glance, without a word, without even acknowledging his existence? He'd been invisible because she'd chosen not to see him. She turned to the board members. 6 faces, various stages of shock and discomfort. The silver-haired man who'd laughed earlier wasn't laughing now. "We need to halt the project." Her voice came out stronger than she felt. "Emergency review of all geological data, independent verification. If there's even a chance Mr. Cole is correct, we can't proceed." "Vivian?" Brooke's voice was urgent, almost pleading. "Groundbreaking is Monday. The mayor's coming. Press, investors, everyone. If we cancel now, we're looking at 10 million in penalties, 12 million if the delay runs long." She held up her phone like it was evidence. "The contracts are meaningless if people die." Vivian cut her off. The room went quiet again. She picked up the blueprint, held it so everyone could see both signatures. "My brother's last project. His dream. And he died trying to do it right. Trying to stop it from being built wrong." She looked at Raymond. "You tried to stop it too. And instead of listening, we made you invisible." The board member with pearls, Margaret something, spoke up. Her voice was careful, measured. "Miss Barrett, I understand the emotional weight here, but we need to be practical. We have one man's word against an entire engineering firm, one man who hasn't practiced architecture in 7 years. She gestured at Raymond, not unkindly. "How do we know his information is still valid?" "We verify it." Vivian's decision was made. She could feel it settling into her bones, solid and unmovable. "We bring in an independent geological firm. We do new test cores. We compare the data. And when Raymond is proven right, we redesign from the ground up." She turned to the lead engineer, whose face had gone from red to pale. "Your firm is dismissed from this project, effective immediately." The explosion was immediate. 3 voices talking over each other, legal threats and contract disputes and professional reputations on the line. Vivian let them rage. She was watching Raymond instead. The way his shoulders had straightened, the way his hands had stopped shaking, the way he looked at his daughter with something that might have been pride. When the noise died down, she spoke again. "Emergency board meeting. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. I want every board member present. I want the mayor's office notified of a possible delay. And I want Raymond Cole present as a consultant." She paused. Let that sink in. "Paid consultant, 50,000 for an 8-week contract, plus benefits." "Ms. Barrett?" Brooke started, but Vivian shook her head. "Not negotiable. This meeting is adjourned." She waited until the room cleared. The board members filed out, muttering. The lead engineer stormed off with his assistant scrambling behind. Brooke lingered by the door, looking torn between loyalty and disbelief, then finally left. The building manager gave Raymond a small nod before disappearing. Then it was just the 3 of them, Vivian, Raymond, and Hazel. The architect, the CEO, and the child who'd forced them both into the light. Vivian sat down heavily in her chair. The adrenaline was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate. For not seeing you. For 5 years. Raymond was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. You were grieving. I understand grief. He looked at his daughter. Hazel, you should have come to me first, not run here. Hazel's chin jutted out, stubborn. You wouldn't have done anything. You never do anything. You just hide and let people treat you like you're nobody. Her voice cracked. But you're not nobody. You're my dad. And you're amazing. And I'm tired of pretending you're not. The rawness in her voice made Vivian's chest tight. She thought about her own father, dead 10 years now. Thought about how much she'd wanted him to see her succeed. To be proud. This child had been fighting for her father's visibility while he'd been trying to stay invisible. The tragedy of it was almost unbearable. Hazel's right. Vivian heard herself say. You are amazing. And tomorrow I need you to prove it. Can you do that? Raymond met her eyes. For the first time, she saw him fully. Not the janitor, not the ghost of her brother's partner, just a man who'd been broken by grief and was maybe, possibly, ready to start putting himself back together. Yes. The word was quiet but certain. I can do that. The board meeting the next morning felt like a trial. Raymond sat at the head of the table, Hazel beside him in a clean uniform, bruise on her cheek dark purple in the fluorescent light. Vivian had spent the night in her office, going through old files, finding every mention of Raymond Cole. There were more than she'd expected. Commendations. Awards. Her brother's handwritten notes in the margins of performance reviews. Ray sees what others miss. Trust him. She'd trusted her brother once. Time to trust his judgment again. The presentation took 90 minutes. Raymond walked them through every calculation, every soil sample, every piece of data from those 18 test cores. He explained the aquifer shift in terms even the non-engineers could understand. He showed them the math, showed them what would happen if they built according to the current plans. Foundation settling, wall cracks, structural compromise. Eventually, catastrophic failure. The independent geological firm Vivian had hired, paying rush fees that made her accountant weep, confirmed everything. Their preliminary report, delivered at 8:30 that morning, validated every number Raymond had provided. The water table had shifted. The pilings would hit saturated soil. The building, as designed, was a death trap waiting to happen. The vote was unanimous. Halt construction, redesign from scratch. Raymond would lead the project. Not as a consultant, as senior architect. Full position, full benefits, salary that made him go pale when Vivian told him privately after the meeting. I can't, he'd started, but she'd cut him off. You can. You will. This is what you're worth. What you've always been worth. We just couldn't see it. She'd held out the contract. Sign it, for Hazel, for my brother, for yourself. He'd signed. His hand had only shaken a little. The weeks that followed were strange. Raymond showed up the first day in his janitor uniform, not owning anything else that fit. Vivian sent Brooke out with her credit card. He'd protested, embarrassed, but Hazel had rolled her eyes. Dad, just let people help you for once. The girl had taken to doing her homework in Raymond's new office, a space on the 15th floor with windows overlooking the river. She'd pin his architectural sketches to the walls, proud as any gallery curator. The work was hard. Raymond's hands, so used to holding mops and cleaning supplies, had to remember how to hold drafting pencils and navigate CAD software. The programs had changed in 7 years. The building codes had evolved. But the fundamentals were still there, buried under grief and survival instinct. He unearthed them slowly, like an archaeologist excavating his own past. Vivian found herself checking in daily, partly because it was her project, partly because watching Raymond come back to life felt like watching her brother's last dream find completion. They'd talk about the design, about weight distribution and environmental impact and aesthetic choices. Sometimes they'd talk about grief, about the people they'd lost, about how survival sometimes meant cutting away pieces of yourself just to keep breathing. I blamed myself for years, Raymond admitted one evening, both of them still in the office long after everyone else had gone home. The city glowed below them, lights reflecting off the river. Thought if I hadn't pushed him, hadn't argued, he wouldn't have been upset, wouldn't have been distracted driving, wouldn't have missed that curve. He called you that night, Vivian said quietly. Told you that you were right. That means he wasn't upset anymore. Wasn't distracted by anger. She turned to look at him. He was at peace with the decision. Whatever happened on that road, it wasn't your fault. Raymond's eyes were wet. I needed to hear that. For 7 years, I've needed to hear that. He wiped at his face, embarrassed. Your brother saved my life by hiring me. Saved it again by calling me that night, even though I didn't know it then. And now, you've saved it a 3rd time. The Barrett family seems to make a habit of pulling me back from the edge. Maybe you pull us back too. Vivian thought about the last 7 years. How she'd buried herself in work, never dating, never taking time off, never allowing herself to feel anything but productive. How she'd shelved her brother's dream project because looking at it hurt too much. Hazel forced me to see what I'd been avoiding, that running from grief doesn't heal it. You have to walk through it, build through it, create something that matters. The redesign took 6 weeks. Raymond worked 12-hour days, sometimes more. Hazel brought him dinner, usually fast food in greasy bags, and they'd eat together in his office. Vivian would find them like that sometimes. Father and daughter, heads bent over blueprints, Hazel asking questions, and Raymond answering with infinite patience. The girl was sharp. She'd inherited her father's eye for detail, his ability to see 3-dimensionally. She wants to be an architect, Raymond told Vivian once, pride thick in his voice. Says she's going to design buildings that withstand anything. Earthquakes, floods, the end of the world. He laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. I believe her. The final presentation to the board was scheduled for a Tuesday. Raymond arrived early, wearing one of the suits Brooke had bought him, looking uncomfortable but determined. The redesign was comprehensive. Steel-reinforced pilings, 18 feet deep, anchored in bedrock. Lateral bracing systems to counter soil movement. Drainage solutions to manage groundwater. Beautiful, safe, expensive. 8 million over budget. 6 months behind schedule. The board approved it. Every single member. Even the silver-haired man who'd laughed that first day stood up and shook Raymond's hand. Exceptional work, Mr. Cole. This city is lucky to have you back. Later, after the congratulations and the handshakes and the promises to start construction within the month, Vivian found Raymond on the roof. It was a place few people knew about, accessible only through a maintenance stairwell. He stood at the edge, looking out over the city he'd helped build, one structure at a time. Thinking about jumping? She kept her tone light. He glanced back. Smiled. Thinking about how different the view looks from up here. I spent 5 years looking at floors. Stains on carpet, scuff marks on tile. Forgot what it felt like to look up. She joined him at the edge. The city sprawled below them, all glass and steel and human ambition. Somewhere down there was the plot of land where Riverside Plaza would rise. Safe now. Built right. My brother would be proud of you. I hope so. Raymond's voice was quiet. I'm trying to be someone Hazel can be proud of. Someone who doesn't hide. He turned to face her fully. Thank you for seeing me. for giving me a chance to remember who I was. You gave me something too. Vivian thought about the last 2 months. How the office felt different now. How she'd started leaving at reasonable hours, taking weekends, calling her mother more than once a month. You reminded me that people matter more than profit, that some things are worth the cost of doing them right. They stood there for a while, two people who'd been lost, finding their way back through grief and grace and a little girl's refusal to let her father stay invisible. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Tomorrow, the work would continue. But tonight, they could just be. 18 months later, Riverside Plaza opened, a sunny October morning, the kind that made you believe in new beginnings. A crowd gathered, investors, city officials, press, families excited about the new housing development rising safe and strong by the river. Vivian stood at the podium, professional in a navy suit, and told the story. Not all of it. The public version, the one about second chances and doing things right, and honoring the legacy of those who came before. Then she introduced Raymond Cole, senior architect, the man who'd made this building possible. He walked up to scattered applause that grew stronger when people saw the design plans projected on the screen behind him, saw the complexity, the innovation, the sheer thoughtfulness of every structural choice. He spoke for 3 minutes, talked about buildings as promises, about the responsibility architects have to the people who live in the spaces they create, about how this building would stand for 100 years because they'd taken the time to get it right. When he finished, Hazel ran up from the front row. 13 now, taller, but still with that fierce pride in her eyes. She hugged her father while cameras flashed. Vivian saw Raymond's arms come around his daughter, saw him whisper something in her ear that made her laugh. The girl who'd burst into a boardroom with mud on her uniform and demanded the world see her father. The catalyst for everything that came after. The ribbon cutting was ceremonial. Vivian and Raymond held the oversized scissors together, cut through red silk while the crowd cheered. The building stood behind them, glass and steel and promise, built on a foundation that would hold, that would last, that would keep people safe. Later, after the crowds dispersed and the officials left and the press packed up their equipment, Raymond found Vivian in what would become the building's lobby. Marble floors, high ceilings, natural light flooding through carefully placed windows. I keep thinking about that day, he said. Hazel running in. My signature on that blueprint. How close we came to disaster. We didn't, though. Vivian touched the wall, solid and real. Because your daughter refused to let you hide. Because you found the courage to speak up. Because sometimes the people we overlook are the ones who save us. She looked at him. You saved hundreds of lives. Families who'll live here safely, children who'll grow up in these apartments. All because you wouldn't stay silent. Raymond's eyes were wet. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Outside, through the windows, they could see Hazel playing on the playground Raymond had designed specifically for this building. Swings and climbing structures and safe rubber surfacing. Built for kids whose parents worked long hours. Built for families like his. She told me something yesterday, Raymond said. Said she's not angry anymore. About the years I spent invisible. Said she understands now that I was doing what I needed to do to keep us afloat. But she's glad I'm visible again. Glad she doesn't have to hide who her father is. Are you glad? Vivian asked. Raymond thought about it. Thought about the weight of expectations, the pressure of being seen, the exhaustion that came with mattering. Then he thought about his daughter's smile when she'd hugged him on stage. About the building behind him, standing strong. About the second chance he'd been given to do work that meant something. Yeah, he said. I'm glad. They walked out of the building together. Past the marble and the glass and the promise of shelter. into sunlight that felt like benediction. Somewhere behind them, carved into the cornerstone in letters that would last as long as the building itself, was a dedication. In memory of those who dream, and in honor of those who build dreams right. Vibi's brother and Raymond Cole, architects. Hazel ran up, breathless and happy. "Dad, can we go get pizza? Ms. Barrett, you should come too. You've basically been family for like a year now anyway." She said it casual, like it was obvious, like family was something you built instead of something you were born into. Raymond looked at Vivian. She looked back. Two people who'd been broken by loss and saved by stubbornness, and a child's refusal to accept invisibility. "Yeah," Vivian said. "Pizza sounds perfect." They walked toward the parking lot. Three people who'd found each other in the wreckage of grief. The building stood behind them, casting long shadows in the afternoon sun. Safe, solid, built on a foundation that would hold through storms and seasons and all the years to come. Built right, built with care, built by a man who'd learned that being seen wasn't weakness, that asking for help wasn't failure, that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was remember who you used to be and fight to become that person again. Raymond Cole's signature on that blueprint 7 years ago had almost been his last. Now it was his beginning, written in steel and stone and the smile on his daughter's face, written in a building that would shelter families for generations, written in the quiet pride of work done right, by hands that had held mops and pencils and finally remembered they were worthy of both. The parking lot was emptying. The celebration was over. But the building remained, and would remain, a promise kept, a dream realized, a signature that meant something because the man who wrote it refused to stay invisible, refused to let dangerous corners be cut, refused to value comfort over conscience. Hazel climbed into the back seat, already pulling out her phone to text her friends. Raymond paused before getting in, looking back one more time at Riverside Plaza. Vivian understood. She looked too. The building her brother had dreamed, that Raymond had saved, that they'd built together across grief and time and the hard work of healing. "It's beautiful," she said. Raymond nodded. "It's safe," he replied. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not just beautiful, safe, standing, real. A monument to second chances and stubborn children and the courage it takes to step from shadow into light. They drove away as the sun set behind the building, painting its windows gold. Tomorrow, families would start moving in. Children would play on that playground. Lives would unfold in those carefully designed spaces. And somewhere, in the foundation, buried 18 feet deep in bedrock, Raymond Cole's work would hold steady. Invisible again. But this time, by choice. This time, knowing that being unseen didn't mean being worthless, that the most important work often happened in places no one would ever see. But he would know. And Hazel would know. And that signature on the cornerstone would tell anyone who cared to look. Raymond Cole was here. He built this, he made it safe, he mattered, and he always had.